Wow. Another episode of the Transforming Lives panel podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Charmin Prince, and we have Mitzi here. And of course, we have a special guest. But before we continue, it's customary for us to just take a moment to take a deep breath and be present and, throw away all of the things that we plan to do, have to do, have done. Just let it go and spend the next 45 minutes with us being present, learning, engaging with each other. So just take a deep breath in and be grateful for the opportunity to take a deep breath, to breathe, and just let go of anything and everything that can hinder you for the next 45 minutes, the distraction, the things to do, the dinner to make, and all the other things that may keep us away from being present. We want to thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for joining us. And before we continue, Mitzi and Jean, how was your day?
Well, my day was beautiful. I don't know about Mitzi's. My day was beautiful because we had a beautiful 80-degree day here in North Carolina and USA, and it's been so cold before this. So it was a glorious day to just go out and worship the sun and the trees and the flowers and the birds.
Thank
And
you.
I had one of those days where there was just lots going on, but I just choose to embrace it and enjoy it and have a great day anyway. So there you are.
Great. Wonderful. So I am going to introduce Jean Peelen. And did I get that correct, Jean?
Well, you can say Peelen or you can say Palin. I just married it years ago. So however you want to say it is fine with me.
Well, let me introduce you to Jean Peelen. At age 83, Jean reinvented her life. And this is something that she has done repeatedly, ranging from being a housewife, a civil rights attorney, a model, actress, elected official, and lately an author. Her first book is Feisty, a memoir in little pieces, which speaks to women of all ages about our lives. And I love this quote that she left us with. In our mobile society, women have lost our tradition aging role as wise women, keepers of family history and wisdom. We need to know how to recreate a role in this society. Jean, welcome to the Transforming Lives.
Thank you so much. I am delighted to be here with you too.
Is there anything you would like to add to that bio?
Well, yeah, I'm also becoming a TikTok star. That is my newest, is teaching on TikTok. And about how everyone should write about their own lives, that it's very healing, and very cheap therapy. And and so I'm on TikTok telling everybody why they should and how they should. So that's the only thing I would add.
So how should they do it?
Well, the how is, is more sort of technical. In other words, if you're writing a memoir, how do you get into your memories, or what do you say, or how do you go about it? In other words, if you're going to write a book about your life, you do not want to start by saying, I was born on April 1st in 1956, or whatever, because you will lose your reader after sentence one. So you have to think about what it is about your life. This is part of the therapy. What it is about your life that you want to share with others. And it may be that you simply want to do legacy for your children and your children's children. Or it may be that you have a message for the world that's important to you that you want to get out there. Or it may be to heal old wounds that are still with you. Or it may be to figure out what your life has been about. That was my reason for writing, to figure out what has my life been about, because I really didn't know.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And as
I
you
saw my life.
reflected on it, as you reflected on your life, what did you determine it was about?
Well, the question for me was, it seemed to me as though my life had been a series of random events. Like, oh, there's a decision, okay, yes or no, but I don't even know, I don't remember at least what went into the yes or no decisions. I didn't see any pattern in my life. I didn't see a storyline or an arc, as authors say, to the story. I didn't know if I had been, on the whole, a good person or a not so good person. And for me personally, writing, what I got was, I've been a good person. I've been a good person. I've been a good person who's done some crappy things to myself and others, but I've been a good person. And for me, that has me so clear, just clear with life. There are no secrets anymore. There are no secrets. There's no shame. That's it.
In going through the process of writing about your life and reflecting on it, it's cathartic for you, right? Because you kind of draw on and remember the event or events, and then
Yeah.
you think about them and process them and look for the good and the bad that came out of it and
That's
what followed as a result of it,
And the
right?
secret I discovered when I first started writing, I just wrote down all these important events in my life, the usual ones: births, deaths, marriages, children, lovers, whatever the important events are to you. But then I realized that I have a lot of memories, and we all do, a lot of memories that we don't know why they're still there. It could be one sentence a teacher said to you in high school. It could be one sentence or a story someone told you, or that you overheard, or a situation you observed, and they didn't seem all that important, yet here they are still with us. They're still here. So I started writing those down, and my book, Feisty, became a series of 65, people get scared when I say this, 65 chapters, but each chapter is like a page and a half, because maybe 2 pages, because each chapter is a moment in time. So it's the memory. And once I started thinking about those little memories, a lot would come back about who was there, or what was the feeling I got that stayed with me, after that conversation. I can remember one time, as I had flunked out of college, I remember one time, after that, I just thought I was dumb, just couldn't do it, period. And someone said to me out of nowhere, "Why are you pretending to be stupid?"
Hmm.
And, that's a shocking statement. Now, I could have just said, "Oh, forget it. He's just rude or crude or whatever." But boy, that sentence has been in my head for 60 years. There's a reason. There's a reason those memories stay. Those memories bring up some emotion in us that matters. And to me, it's an emotion that may bring us joy, or it may bring us, "Ooh, I've never really dealt with this." You don't know quite what it's going to bring up. But that's how I went about writing about my life, by accessing memories.
What was that deciding factor that led you to write about your life?
Oh, you're going to find the answer so boring. It was it was COVID. I had just moved, not just, but I moved to a tiny house community in North Carolina. So I live in a 400 square foot house. a tiny house in a tiny house village. And this was going to be my final real retirement. I kept retiring and then kept taking up new things. But this was going to be my real retirement. So I was here about a year and I thought, holy moly, my social life, my intellectual life consists of Tuesday night taco trivia. I don't think I can do this. I'm not, I don't know why I'm getting up in the morning, right? It was boredom, really. I felt as though I didn't feel as though I had no purpose anymore. I don't know if everyone needs to have purpose, but I cannot be without purpose. I need a reason to get up in the morning. And so it was really the boredom that led to it, that I sat down and I thought, well, what have I always wanted to do that I can do in my house by myself? And I've always wanted, I tried about 10 years ago to write about my life, but I was trying it in the usual way, like start at the beginning, talk about every event as you go along the way. That's stuff that bores people. I wasn't getting anywhere with it. And I thought, well, I don't really have anything to say. Well, it turned out I have a lot to say. A lot. Yeah.
So do you just sort of like think of an event and then just kind of rewrite everything that kind of comes to mind about that event and then kind of put that page somewhere and then eventually kind of go through and kind of organize them into as they occurred in your life? Or
Yes, I did. Yes, I just started writing about the memories without any order. It ended up being in chronological order, going from age 5 to age 82. And at the beginning of each chapter, I say the year and my age, okay, when this event happened. And there are a number of years skipped where either not much happened or maybe something happened that I did not want to write about because I was not going to hurt any living being, with my writing. So there are things that you don't write about for that reason. But yeah, that's how I went about it. And what I would do is sit and think about the occasion. And when I wrote it, I didn't write it like, well, when I was 5, this happened. I wrote it as though I was there at the time, like the opening chapter, which is sort of how it got named Feisty. I have my mother saying to me, as though it were that time, that year, 1945 or 46, I'm saying, tell me about my birth again, and my mother saying, was I really born yellow? My mother says, yes, I've told you this story so many times, and it goes on from there. And I say, well, she said, I said, what did the doctor say? Well, they may say, he said, you may have to have your blood all changed. I said, but they didn't do that. Why not? And she said, you just got better. And I say, in the book, I say, what did I say then? Because this is my favorite part of the story. And she said, the doctor said she's one feisty kid. Okay. So the whole book is written at each event as though I'm there experiencing it, not as though it's a past event. And that wasn't always easy to write because I have a tendency, I'm a former, as you know, attorney. I wrote so many policy memos and legal memos. And when you're writing a policy memo or a memo for your bosses in the federal government, here are the rules. Tell them what you're going to say it, then tell them what you said. Okay? Those are the rules for writing, right? Well, I couldn't do that. There were so many, almost every chapter I wanted to say to the reader, essentially, got it? Did you get it? Right? Did you get what I was trying to say here? It was so hard to have, it's unusual for a memoir to have no commentary, no analysis of the meaning. I just tell the story. There's this moment, there's this moment, there's this moment, and the reader gets to figure out what it means. I had a friend who used to be an editor who helped me, and if she said once, she said 1,000 times, Jean, respect your reader.
Mm.
and I heard her. So it's a very unusual format, even for a memoir. But I love doing it. I hated doing it, and I love doing it, both. You know.
So in a sense, it's a story, a collection of short stories about your life, like sort of
Yes.
each one is like a short story in effect.
Yes. Yes. And I lived at a time in history when it was like the second wave of the feminist movement. So I got to meet some people that I became very active in it, and I wouldn't otherwise have met. So, like a speech that turned my life around, and I have something about that in the book, was a speech I heard by two women, Gloria Steinem and Flo Kennedy. Those two women were very Flo Kennedy has passed. Gloria Steinem just turned 90 years old. Um, but, those two women affected my life greatly. So I got to talk about them. I got to interview some, most younger women don't know this name, but a woman named Betty Friedan, who wrote The Feminine Mystique back in the 1960s. And it was what kicked off the new feminist movement back then. And she was brilliant and crabby. And she started all of the big organizations, NOW and Women's Political Caucus, and she pretty much got kicked out of every one of them because she was so cantankerous, and arguing with people. And I got to interview her. I had a little radio show, and I got to interview her, and that was such an experience. I worked for a while, another experience. I worked for a while. My boss was for Clarence Thomas. He was my boss for about a year and a half, and had an experience with him while we were drinking beer. And that's in the book. So I had a chance to meet not celebrities in the normal sense, but people who have made or making, for good or ill, a difference in this world. And I'm always fascinated by people who, I don't even know what the right word is, but who risk. A friend of mine used to say, you got to go out on the skinny branches. And so I've always admired people who go out on the skinny branches. So yeah, that's
What
that's my
emotion? I'm sorry, go continue. What emotional fortitude, resilience that you identify while writing the book that you didn't know you possess?
all the while I was living and stepping out there and going to law school at 35 with two kids and supporting my kids and, going to school. Meanwhile, typing my lover's paper for law review, he who had no jobs and no children. Some of us stays stuck. Some of us stay stuck for a while. I didn't know that what I was doing was hard or unusual. I honestly didn't see it that way. I just saw this is what I want over here. I talked about 5 years ago, I talked to a psychic who said, "Oh, you've been working so hard your whole life." And I said, "No, I haven't. No, I have not." And she said, "You don't even know that you have." She said, "And now, this is the nice part of this, got to be some benefits to aging here." She said, "One of the side benefits of this is that you are now at a place where you don't have to work that hard anymore. You can speak things into being." And I accept that. I accept that. So I don't know if that really answers your question, because I don't know what along the way had me doing the things I was doing. I just know I wasn't afraid. I wasn't fearful. I wasn't fearful to leave Washington, D.C. and move to Florida. I moved to an island off the west coast of Florida because I had never lived near water. and I wanted to experience what that was. I didn't know a soul there, but I wanted to experience that. I moved here to North Carolina after 10 years in Florida because I'd never lived near mountains. And I wanted to understand what it was like to live near mountains with gorgeous trees. So I just do it. That's the thing. And I didn't ever felt it took courage or boldness, or it didn't feel like that at the time. It just didn't.
Well, it sounds like it because it's core to what your personality is that you sort of see the opportunity or the thing you want to do, and you just sort of say, okay, let's make it happen.
And I knew from birth that I wanted to do something. I don't know that it's something a person can learn. I knew from birth that I wanted to do more than what the world expected for me to do, which is get married and have babies. I knew that. I just didn't know what it was, where it was, how to get there. I didn't know any of it. I mean, I consider myself extremely fortunate. Things happened, things came my way, things appeared. Thank you, universe. Just, yeah.
Was there any sort of big surprises for yourself as you were kind of starting to think about the book and pulling memories? Were there any that kind of popped into your mind that you hadn't thought about for a really long time and were kind of surprised that they reared their head at that time? Or
I think so. One of them was, actually, this was sort of shocking to me. There are two huge events in the book that I believe were the main shapers of my life. One was being molested as a child, and the other was being inspired to go into civil rights work. Okay. Both of them, someone had to point this out to me as I was writing. My editor said, you do realize, blah, 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 that the figure who was involved with the molestation was the school janitor, trusted figure. He was the janitor. 30 years later, more than 30 years later, when I was living in Mobile, Alabama, and Martin Luther King Jr. was killed, and this is in the book, my husband was a minister in a church in Mobile, Alabama, and the person who was the janitor, his name was Alfred Lloyd Tennyson Scott. He asked for time off to go to the funeral, and the whole church was in an outrage that he would ask to go to the funeral. This is Mobile, Alabama. Called him a communist. He'd worked there for 40 years and put 3 children through college, working as a janitor in this church. He revealed that Coretta Scott King was his aunt, or his niece, his niece. And I saw him risk everything for family and belief, and it just went in, that I so admired that kind of risk and commitment and bravery that I had to be part of this. And somebody pointed out 2 janitors, all those years apart. I never would have seen it had I not written the book. And so, yeah, that was, wow, very surprising and startling to me.
Thank you for sharing about your trauma, because that would have been my question. Was there some traumatic experiences that came up while writing the book?
Yes.
And how did you handle that? And the second part to that question is, if you had one advice or encouragement to give to women who are listening, how would you encourage them to deal with their traumas?
Such easy little questions you're giving me. Well, part one, part one, I will tell you this story. When I was recording Feisty, because I do the audio recording, it's on Amazon. And when I was recording it, and I was recording the chapters about the molestation, and I came to the last sentence in which I conclude that remember, I'm writing as though I were there. I conclude that it was my fault that I was molested because I asked to go into the school and we had been told not to go into the school. Okay. So I lied and said, he asked me to come into the school. My conclusion of all of this was that it was my fault I was molested and I was a liar. Okay. That's what a child's brain does.
Mhm.
So I have lived with that for many years. I've talked to therapists, friends, I've been through it over and over, working with it. And I always think I'm through it now. It's 72 years later. When I was recording it and came to that last sentence that said, I am a liar and no one should ever trust me. And my voice broke, just broke. I did not expect emotion to come up after 72 years. I was 10 years old when it happened. The engineer came flying into the recording room, studio, and said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "I am. I did not expect that. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." And we talked a little bit, and then he said, "You're so actually, this isn't part of the story, but he said, 'You're so brave.'" And I said, "No, this happens to so many young women and some young men." He said, "I know it happened to me. Thank you for recording this." So, but the point was, I said, "Okay, I'm ready. Let's re-record it." And he said, "Oh, no, that's staying in. That's staying in." So yes, those traumatic events, particularly sexual abuse, are incredibly powerful in so many ways, including certainly shaping how we see ourselves and how we see others, like trust. But, I lived a good part of my life seeing myself as a liar, not to be trusted. So it's incredibly powerful. Now, that second half was a killer diller. What would be my advice for women who have been through that kind of? Well, certainly my advice is to, as quickly as possible, get into therapy. Get help wherever your therapy is, if it's your minister, but with preferably not with family, to help yourself. I'm talking about you probably want to share it with family, but get support. As I said, the series I'm doing on TikTok is write about it. So journal, and don't just write about it once and think you've fixed it. You don't fix it, you just make your reactions less intense. I just gave, by the way, here's an exercise that I give out. I just gave this out on TikTok. I say part of healing a traumatic event, whether it's men or women, but I'm usually talking to women on TikTok, is tell yourself, do an exercise, tell yourself or write the story of what happened to you 3 different ways. The first way to write it is the way you usually tell the story. We have our victim story really engraved in ruts in our brain. We know how we tell it every time. We use the same words, the same sentences, and we bring up the emotion again. Okay. So tell it the way you always write it, the way you always write it. When you're done with that, write the experience again as though you are a reporter, that you are reporting on the incident. So it's who, what, when, where. No emotion is in that. You are just saying, here's what happened. Boom, 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 boom. The third way to write it is to say, this is what happened, and it's a very good thing it happened to me. That's the killer. People just, what? You know, the goal of it, of course, is to give yourself distance, give yourself space to know that you are not the victim forever. You can see this in different ways, different lights. You get some space between you and it. Because if we just live with that victim story the way we've always told it in our heads, we will always be the victims. So that's just one technique that I really encourage people to use.
That's really, really helpful. I've never sort of heard that particular recommendation of sort of how to deal with it. And I, like so many others, and I mean, I think it's unfortunate, but it's the reality. I was raped when I was in university,
Yes.
and had to process through it. And so, as you say, you sort of go through it and you live through it. But that kind of idea now to sort of write about it as a reporter, and then write about it as you're sort of standing there looking at it, and you know all of the things that happen to us shape us for who we are.
Yes.
We wouldn't be who we are at this moment had we not gone through whatever things good and bad that we did. So I really,
And
really,
you will
for me,
still
that's a real,
it will still come up and come up and come up, but you are, for me, I am now much less the victim. you know, I see what happened to that little girl. I have that kind of space on it. And I see how that little girl acted and reacted and what she made up about herself because of it. But I'm not that little girl now. So I can look at it. I don't want to say objectively because that doesn't sound right to me. But I can look at it from different viewpoints. As this thing happened, let's describe it. Mhm.
Thank you for sharing, and it means so much to us. As a survivor, when I teach other survivors, I usually tell them, write your victim story and write your survivor story. But I
Yes.
love what you said about taking it from a reporter standpoint, because it's like you're being the observer of
Yes,
that incident. So thank you for sharing that.
indeed. Indeed.
But your picture with, is it Wonder Woman or Superwoman?
That is Wonder Woman. Well, I don't know if it's Wonder Woman or Superwoman. That's feisty, the book. We changed this was actually a snapshot. It wasn't posed. I was running for office and decided I might as well run for office in my little town in Florida as Superwoman. So for the book, they changed the S to an F. I assume it's for feisty, right? Or anything else. And they added the cape to get some movement, you know? But yeah, that's that. The cover, I had to fight for this cover. The publisher did not want to use a snapshot. And I kept saying, you got to do it. We've got to have this. So yeah, I'm real happy with the response to it. People, in bookstores, I do book signings, and in bookstores, people are funny. They walk by and nobody wants to get trapped at the author's table, you know, and because then you feel like you have to buy the book or you're being pressured to buy the book. So they come by and they give it the side eye, huh? Like that. Oh, there's that book. And then you see them looking again because they see the cover and they go away, and after a while they come back, right, and start talking, and we start talking about the book. And women always get it right away. They say, what's the book about? And I say, well, the book is about what happens when a woman wants more than what the world wants for her.
Hmm.
And women get it immediately. It needs no other explanation. They don't need to read the back. They say, okay, I want the book. It's very interesting. Men are a little weird about it all, I have to say. They just are.
In your quote, you said, in our mobile society, women have lost our tradition aging roles as wise women. I think it's such a profound statement. Can you expand on that?
Sure. We don't live in villages anymore. You know, when I grew up, the whole family lived probably within 5 miles of each other, several in the same town, nearby towns. And the women of the family, as they aged, my grandmother, my great grandmother, were the wise women for the family. And that was their role, to carry on, to tell about the family, tells family stories, to teach us their wisdom. Well, we don't live in villages anymore. I have 7 grandchildren. They are around the world. One's in South Africa, one was in China. They're everywhere. And what women now, aging women, are discovering is that nobody wants to hear their wisdom. Nobody cares to hear their wisdom. We live in a youth society, and no one cares to hear it. And women who are 70, 80, 90 are sort of lost as to, well, why are we here? What are we doing? I think we still have the wisdom to pass, but it's up to us to discover new ways to communicate, new audiences to communicate to. And hence, I'm on TikTok. Why wouldn't I be? If I want to talk to young women, it's not going to be in my tiny house village where almost everybody is 50 or 60 or 70 years old. So it's up to us to find what the new ways are of communicating what we know from our experience, wisdom, from living to the age we're living. I also, because of that, started a group and a website called Old Women Who Write. The website is just oldwomenwhowrite.com. And the Facebook page is it's a Facebook group, Old Women Who Write. We now have about 200 old women who write in that group. And it's exciting because that's another form of passing on your learnings, experiences, wisdom. So I'm exploring different ways we can reach different groups. My grandchildren don't want to come visit me from California and say, what do you have to teach us, Nana? No, not going to happen.
My cat really wants to hear your stories.
What
Funny.
motivates you at your age to embrace social media, to embrace the technological age? Because most people your age they may not be on social media. They don't even have a Facebook page or know how to manage that. What's your motivation?
It's really in part personal to me, which is my mother and my grandmother had Alzheimer's, died of Alzheimer's. So it's strongly in the family, I became very aware of it, and for a number of years I was very, very afraid of it. I'm not afraid of anything really anymore. I'm not afraid. Here's a kitty. I'm not afraid of it anymore. But I recognize that it's out there as a possibility. I mean, in the book I say I'm either going to be demented or I'm not. Those are the two possibilities. But I'm going to do everything that I see that I can do to have that not happen. And of course, one of those things is keep your brain busy and learning all the time. So for me, technology and social media is perfect learning opportunity because none of it comes naturally. My 20-year-old granddaughter came and spent a week with me to teach me TikTok, Instagram, how to do this stuff, and I really appreciated that. That's the backwards wisdom. I'm getting wisdom from my granddaughter. So a lot of it is personal. The other is that because I always have to have a purpose, and I'm still out there, demonstrating for women and all sorts of civil rights issues. I better be up on technology or I'm going to be left behind and left alone here, without a community to connect with. That's why.
Beautiful, beautiful. You mentioned um, leaders or historic figures in the feminine movement. From your involvement then to what's happening in that space now, what difference have you identified? And as someone who identifies as a feminist, how can we bridge the gap or repair the breach today?
I will tell you, my experience of this is I stand in awe of young women nowadays, right now. I stand in awe of them. I think that women, particularly women of color, are going to save this country. And so I stand in awe of their activism, their intelligence, their bravery, their commitments, their whatever. It used to be that you tried to bring people along slowly, sort of. That, no more, no more, no more. And it's clear to me that women of all political parties are being radicalized around the country right now on the issue of women and what can women do with their own bodies. I don't know if you saw the Alabama election very recently in a very, very Republican district that the former president won easily. They had an election for a state, and a Democrat female won, whose issue was women and their bodies. And that's never happened in Alabama. And so I know this is happening across the country, and it's the young women who are doing it. I belong to, I'm not promoting anything here. Well, sort of I am, but I belong to the Democratic Party here in North Carolina. It is so wimpy, and it is so made up of people over 50, over 60, who keep saying, we would like to get young people to come to our meetings so they can hear what we have to say. They've got it totally backwards. They should be inviting young people to their young women, particularly to their meetings, to listen to them about what issues they're looking at and facing and what they're doing about it, because the people my age and 30 years younger are stuck in history. They're stuck in time. So that's where I am about it.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing. I think that this is really going to help our listeners, one, be inspired because you are so energetic and lively and together. And that in and of itself is inspiring, but the whole process of what you've gone through and sort of the way to look at things. And I encourage our listeners to pick up a copy of your book because, just from the brief amount of time that we've gotten to spend with you, I can tell there's going to be so many amazing nuggets within that book that everybody rush right out and get it.
Also, there's also some really funny parts too, just so you know.
And where can our listeners pick up your book, and where can they contact you?
Yeah, since they're all over the place, certainly the book is on Amazon, Feisty, a memoir in little pieces. And if somebody reads it and if they leave a review, it's so helpful to unknown authors. So helpful, because if you get over a certain number of reviews, Amazon starts promoting your book. Okay. And if they want to contact me, they can go to my website, which is, cleverly enough, jeanpeelen.com. So it's JeanPeelen.com. And all my contact information is on there, and where I'm doing appearances and book signings and fun things.
Okay. And they can also find you on social media.
On TikTok, cleverly enough, Jean Palin on TikTok. I think it's, how do they do it? At Jean Palin or something, I
Okay,
think.
at Jean Peelen, and on Facebook, the Old Women Who Write
Yes,
group.
it's a private group, so they need to get on and ask to come in the group. And by the way, even though it's called Old Women Who Write, it's not age restricted. We have a number of younger women in there. And on the website, Old Women Who Write, I interview mostly women over 50 who are writers, agents, publishers, poets, novelists, memoirists. I do interviews of people on there.
Wow.
I stay busy.
Yes, you do. Well, thank you for being here, and I hope that we can revisit your journey in a year.
Absolutely.
If you would be available, because by then you might be a celebrity whom we have to go through your agent.
I might be on Oprah. Who knows? Of course, she's not on anymore, but that would be
Thank
great.
you. Thank you so much. And all of Jean's information is going to be in the show notes. And we will see you next time on our next episode. This has been the Transforming Lives panel podcast.